This is a lot of spooky chemicals.
It really, really is.
Well, on this episode of Doing the Most, we're gonna de-spookify all of these chemicals that you may have seen in the background of our brew space.
Homemade brews and various how-tos, everything from mead to roast, bake creation, fermentation, inebriation, doing the most.
Let's take this from the least spooky to the most spooky. Can we do that?
Of course we can. All right, let's start from the bottom.
That was incredible.
I know. So this is spooky level 1.
Spooky level 1. What is this?
What you've handed me first is calcium carbonate.
First things first. It does not appear to be open.
That's because I've never used it. So what this does is helps to reduce the acidity of your water. The reason I bought this is because I was making a very acidic mead, and I thought I might need to raise the pH so that the yeast could thrive. Ended up not needing it.
So what's spooky about this?
It's a white powder.
White powders are spooky. Let's do this like this bucket, this jug. What's this?
As you can see by the label, this is maltodextrin.
Maltodextrin.
Often sold as a supplement for bodybuilding. Maltodextrin is also used sometimes in homebrewing to build up the body of
Whoa! Puns.
of your brew. Yeah.
Got it.
So it's a non-fermentable sugar. It's not very sweet.
Okay.
And what it does is it makes things thicker. Like if you had made a stout and it had no chew to it, you could add a little maltodextrin to thicken it up.
Got it.
Not spooky,
So,
food safe.
What color is it?
White?
So it's another.
It's another spooky
It's a
white
spooky
powder.
white powder.
Yeah.
Got it.
Would you like to move on to a comforting brown
Yes,
powder?
tell me
Just
about-
to get your mind off of the spooky white powder?
Yes. Tell me about this pickle jar of comforting brown powder.
So this is powdered wine tannin.
Okay.
And it's made from ground up bits of grapes and sometimes grape stems. I think this one's got a little chestnut in there. And
seasonal.
Yeah. And basically the idea behind tannin is that it's also a bodybuilder, but it also provides astringency. So depending on the level to which you add it, you can get differing effects on the mouthfeel of your brew. It's all natural, nothing to be scared
Oh,
of.
natural? That's not scary at all.
You probably wouldn't want to eat it, but it's.
He might.
I might. You never know. So some people will use teas or oak or other things like that to add tannin. I think it's easiest to just use a little powdered wine tannin.
Got it. Okay. I know this is supposed to be spooky, but there is something about this that is comforting. This is a comforting white powder.
Is it because it's floofy?
Yeah, it's floofy.
So that is powdered lactose.
Lactose.
It's a milk sugar, also a non-fermentable sugar. It provides a little bit of sweetness, but not a whole lot. Typically what you would use lactose in would be like a milk stout.
Okay.
Something to give it a creaminess. Actually, this mead right here has about a half a pound of lactose in it in order to give it a creamy mouthfeel. Not super scary, unless
you're lactose intolerant.
Yeah, then you might not want to consume lactose.
That would be spooky.
Because it
or
might
at least uncomfortable.
it might haunt your whole night.
Okay.
Oh.
And what is this? Pectic enzyme. I read the bag.
Yeah, pectic enzyme. As you can see, this has been repackaged.
They sell it like this.
It didn't arrive to me like this. This is pectic enzyme, pectinase, by its enzymatic name. Pectic enzyme is an enzyme that's naturally occurring, and it helps break down cell walls in fruit. And so for some, actually, there's pectic enzyme in here too, because this was made with orange juice, and orange juice has a ton of pectin in it.
So this is a spooky white chemical mead.
It's basically just a whole mead made of chemicals.
Got it.
From the citric acid in the oranges to the dihydrogen monoxide.
All right, so these are our spooky level 1 powders.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, I don't feel particularly scared. I don't find them especially spooky. But maybe spooky level 2 will up the ante.
Maybe.
You have to.
Well, you did it now. You just did it. Well, look at that. You have the magic poofing fingers yourself. Incredible.
Goodness gracious. All right, spooky level 2. Tell me what we got.
Where would you like to start?
Let's start with this little pack that looks not very useful.
In my opinion, it's not very useful, but some people love this. This is bentonite.
Bentonite.
It's a clay that comes from volcanic ash, and it's used as a fining agent, so it will help clarify your brews.
Interesting. I will say volcanoes add like a touch of spookiness to the situation. I could see this in the background of a scary movie.
Yeah, maybe. It's just a clarifier. Actually, all of these things that you're looking at here are clarifiers or fining agents.
Got it. All right, so what about this one?
That's whirlfoc.
Whirlfoc.
It's made of Irish moss and a little bit of binder, and it's used in a boil. So you'd add it about 15 minutes before your beer boil is done, and it will help all those things clump together and fall out so you have clear beer on the other end.
So you say Irish moss, and I think creature from the lagoon.
Oh,
So
dun, dun, dun.
we're getting there. A little
We're getting
spooky.
there. It's, Irish moss also natural, so.
I mean, spooky things can be natural.
That's true. This is also a little bit natural.
A little bit. What part is not natural?
The clumping agent that they add.
So this is, it says on there, sparkolloid.
Sparkolloid. I think the scariest thing about sparkolloid is it's been discontinued.
Oh no! Why?
Because it includes a spooky little dust called diatomaceous earth. And diatomaceous earth is generally not seen as spooky. However, the makers of sparkolloid consider it potentially spooky. So diatomaceous earth is kind of jaggedy, and so when you breathe it in, it can tear up your cell structures, your cell walls inside your lungs. A lot of folks will use this to prevent pests in their garden, or in some cases remove bed bugs because it slices and dices them. So you don't want to breathe this in. You want to push it into your measuring spoon real firm and mix that into your boiling water and then pour it in. So it's only spooky if you just inhale it.
But if I drink it...
Apparently that's fine. And we've even got a YouTube member who's told us about her knack for drinking diatomaceous earth. I think every day, she said.
Every day? That's a lot. All right. Well... So this is murder powder, but still...
It's like slow over long periods of time murder powder.
Got it. Suffocation powder.
Something like that. Lung scarring powder.
Got it.
But it's only spooky if you inhale it.
So a solid spooky level 2, but in terms of mead making, I'm still like not that scared.
Yeah. I'd be more scared of alcohol poisoning at this point.
Got it. Okay. Well, let's move on to spooky level 3.
Spooky level 3. Sorry. Bruised by the power of magic.
So what do we have here?
We have things made of acid.
Acid?
And acid can be really spooky.
Why?
Because in movies they make it look kind of spooky.
Because it melts your flesh.
Because it can melt your face right off.
No thank you.
Fortune smiles, another day of wine and roses.
Yeah, so these are all very mild acids.
Got it. Mild acid. So let's start with this one that's in this bright yellow packaging that appears to have lemons on it.
Yeah, that's citric acid.
Citric acid.
And everybody, I think, probably knows what citric acid is, but flavor profile-wise, it is a fresh, bright, and sharp acid.
Got it. And it's in everything, right?
It's in a lot of things, yeah.
Okay, so we've got citric acid from our favorite citrus fruits. Mm-hmm. Let's start with this one. This friendly jar. This friendly cute mason
little,
jar.
Like, farmer's market
of acid.
Special jar of acid. That's malic acid. It's dominant acid in things like grapes and apples.
Got it. These are spooky just because they're in powdered form?
Yeah, and the word acid is in the name.
Got it.
This is an acid blend. It includes malic and citric acid. It also includes tartaric acid, which is a dominant acid in grapes. And this is kind of old school, but I wanted to include this because some of y'all may have this in your brew space. But acids, spooky acids. These are all acids that are added to balance your brew.
Got it.
So if you need a little brightness, maybe some citric acid, need a little round acid, you might add some malic acid, that sort of thing.
So why wouldn't I just do a squeeze of lemon juice?
Because
or
you might get
some grapes.
You might get a squeeze of lemon flavor or some grape flavor, and that may not be what you want in your brew. For example, if you're making a traditional mead and you feel like you just need a little bit of brightness to highlight the varietal of honey, say you put enough lemon juice in there to add citric acid, you're also probably going to get a lot of lemon flavor that is going to overshadow the honey notes of what you're trying to highlight in a traditional mead.
These are precision tools.
Yes, precision tools.
Precision tools.
These, yeah, that's a great way of putting it. These are like a scalpel, while
That's spooky.
using a lemon or an apple might be like using a sledgehammer.
And then tell me about this liquid acid. This definitely feels like more in line with melting my flesh
Yeah,
out.
so this is StarSan. I believe it's phosphoric acid. Yeah, phosphoric acid.
That sounds really scary.
It's an acid that's in Coca-Cola.
That is even scarier.
Yeah, so phosphoric acid is the active ingredient in StarSan, which is a sanitizing solution. You mix an ounce or two of this with however much water, however much you're making, and it dilutes it down so it is the right strength to obliterate any microorganisms that could infect your brew.
This is scary to microorganisms.
Yeah, if you're a microorganism and you're hanging out inside of a carboy and you see this coming for you,
It's pretty spooky.
run for the hills.
Got it. All
They
right.
have eyes.
Acid is certainly, gives you a bit of pause.
Sure. Yeah, I wouldn't
But-
want to drink this.
I hope you don't.
I don't fear the foam. Are we ready to go into spooky
think
level
we're
4?
ready to
You're,
spooky
you're not
level
appropriately spooked yet.
No.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Well, I'm
I'm
doing my best
I'm
here.
trying to get there. Okay.
All right. Would you like to do the
Oh,
honors?
yeah.
So,
Spooky level 4.
spooky level 4. We've got one, and I wouldn't even call it a spooky white powder. It's more like a spooky white crystalline substance.
Is it not this one?
Yeah, it is.
Let's talk about this last. Let's go from
So some comforting brown powders.
yeah.
then?
Let's start with this comforting brown powder.
Yeah. So that's Go-Ferm.
It's sticky.
Go-Ferm is a yeast rehydration nutrient.
Yeast rehydration nutrients. That sounds like right out of a science fiction.
It's
scary
Frankenstein's
horse
monster.
lab. Frankenstein's monster.
Nonsense. Yeah, so Go-Ferm is basically just it's vitamins and it's like giving your yeast a vitamin supplement and a nice healthy serving of vegetables as they are rehydrating, as they are when yeast is rehydrating, it soaks up water or must, whatever you're rehydrating it in. And as it's doing that, it puts the yeast under some stress. So what better way to alleviate your yeast stress than to make sure that they have plenty of nutrients in the liquid that they're in, so they suck those inside of their little eukaryotic cell structure, and they start off on their best foot.
So your yeast are comatose,
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
and you give them this magic comforting brown powder,
Mm-hmm.
and they reanimate.
Yeah, healthily.
It's a little bit spooky,
A little bit.
but
And then once they're going, we use this comforting brown powder
okay.
called Fermaid-O, and it's organic.
Organic. Now, what does that mean?
That means it's an organic source of yeast assimilable nitrogen.
So, like, the USDA didn't put their sticker
Probably
on
not.
this.
Probably not. But this is made from what they call autolyzed yeast. This is made from dead yeast
Okay.
and other things, but there's dead yeast in here. And so when you're feeding your yeast, they're eating a little bit of the dead souls of their brethren.
That's a little bit spooky.
I think it's a little bit spooky,
So-
but it's just organic food.
Yeast are cannibals.
Yes, they are. They're cannibals naturally. As their brethren die around them, they will make sure to absorb all of the nutrients from those dead yeast holes. So
That may be the spookiest thing I've heard all day.
could be.
Okay,
So
so,
there's a lot of other stuff other than that in here, but this is yeast food basically.
okay. So what is this spooky white crystal?
That is diammonium phosphate, which is inorganic nitrogen, which means it was synthesized in a laboratory. And the biggest thing to be concerned about with inorganic nitrogen is it's much more readily accessible, and so it's like giving your yeast candy. Whereas this is like giving your yeast a full balanced meal.
The 3-course dinner. Bull. No, roast beef, but I haven't got it quite right yet.
This is just giving them candy and letting them run wild.
The Candyman can.
And so there are circumstances where you would not want to use diammonium phosphate, or you'd want to dial back your use of diammonium phosphate depending on what you're brewing.
Got it.
But they're used similarly to feed your yeast.
Well, I mean, that doesn't seem spooky at all.
However,
It's not any dead yeast in there.
There is one spooky word on this package that may alarm you.
Am I supposed to say
You can say it.
This says urea on it.
Yeah, it is derived from urea, and we will not say out loud what that means. We'll just throw a little lower third down there that explains how diammonium phosphate is made.
Well,
So it can be a little spooky.
a little spooky.
Now you have to consider that this
or
is
just icky.
this is the purified form, so there's not like other stuff in here.
Yeah,
Are we ready to go to spooky level 5?
I think so.
All right. Wow, I didn't know you could do it by clapping.
All right. Spooky level 5.
I love how well delivered that line was.
Yeah,
the
my
second
clap wasn't very good either.
one. It's fine.
Spooky
It
level
did the job.
Spooky level 5. What
Spooky
have we
level
got
5.
here? We've got some sprinkles and some Altoids.
Yeah, sprinkles and Altoids. Just, give them to your kids. It's Halloween, after all.
So tell me what these sprinkles actually are.
So that's potassium sorbate,
Potassium sorbate.
which
Got it.
is a kind of salt.
Okay, that's not spooky.
And actually, potassium sorbate has the same level of toxicity as table salt.
Okay,
How much table salt do you think you'd have to eat to die?
I don't want to know. I don't want to find out. That sounds really gross.
Yeah.
So what do you do with this salt? What's it for?
This is for stabilization. And so
Okay.
if you were, for example, going to back sweeten a brew with fermentable sugars, for example, if you had brewed a mead and instead of back sweetening it with stevia or erythritol or something like that, you wanted to back sweeten with table sugar or honey, you would need to stabilize. You can stabilize through pasteurization or you can stabilize through these chemicals.
Okay, so this stabilizes. So how does it stabilize?
It works in tandem with this to stabilize. So potassium sorbate prevents yeast from reproducing.
Okay, so this
So
sterilizes your yeast.
Yeah, once that's in there, your yeast cannot, because yeast are eukaryotes. They're single-celled and they reproduce asexually. So they bud off and that little bud becomes a new yeast. This prevents them from doing that process.
So it's like a little bit of yeast eugenics.
Yeah, sure. But
It's a little spooky.
a little bit, all cultivated yeast are a part of yeast eugenics. It's real. Okay, so that works in tandem with this.
Okay.
Do you know what this is?
No, it's Altoids.
You definitely know what this is. This is potassium metabisulphite.
Potassium metabisulphite.
Yeah, so both of these are potassium-based. Potassium metabisulphite is an antioxidant, and what that means is it helps remove oxygen in your must, and yeast need oxygen for synthesis. So this one prevents them from synthesizing. It prevents them from doing their processes to continue doing what they do in your brew. So this one sterilizes them essentially so that they cannot reproduce, and this one prevents them from being active. So working together, they basically stabilize your must.
So these are yeast coma pills.
Sure.
What happens
mean-
if I eat this?
They actually use these industrially to dechlorinate water.
Oh. So I eat them all the time.
I mean, it depends on how your water reclamation plant works, but yeah, they may be just pitching in giant shovelfuls of potassium metabisulphite to
Seems like
dechlorinate
it
the water.
would make more sense to just get bigger tablets.
Maybe they do. Maybe they're like football sized and they chuck them from across the room.
That would be fun. Okay, well, I get that it's like a chemical and it's...
Yeah, and people see these as yeast killers. They don't necessarily kill the yeast, but they create a wasteland in your brew,
Right.
which I guess could be spooky.
Yeah, a graveyard. That's
A ghost town.
a ghost town, a yeast ghost town.
Are you scared?
I'm not.
The reality is, if you're using these things effectively and as prescribed by the manufacturer and following the MSDS, you should have no concerns over toxicity.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, is you have not showed me anything today that, as far as I know, could even adversely affect my health.
Yeah.
I guess sparkolloid if I breathe it in.
Well, and it depends on the amount of consumption. In the amounts that we are using these, no. Now, if you really over-sulfited something, there are people, the FDA estimates it's less than 1% of the US population. There are people who are sensitive to sulfites. But when you look at the amount of sulfites that go into a mead or a wine, it is like 10 parts per million, whereas the sulfites in, say, a prune or a raisin can be 500 to 2,000 parts per million. So
That's a lot.
I honestly think a bag of raisins from the grocery store might be spookier than this jar.
I think that's a possibility. Also, look at how cute this jar is.
It is adorable.
I was not particularly scared today. There wasn't anything that is more spooky than anything we find in our kitchen or under our sink.
Yeah.
So, better luck next time.
All right. Well, maybe next year we can find something a little bit spookier, but probably not.
Thanks for watching. Hit that thumbs up. It helps us a lot. Ring that bell. You'll get notifications of when our videos come out. And please subscribe and also consider being a patron or a YouTube member to help pay for all these spooky chemicals and also all the other things that go into mead, like yeast and honey. And we have a website.
We do.
It is
Doingthemost.org.
And we have a Pinterest.
Doing the most okay.
And we have an Instagram.
Doing the most okay also.
And someday I'll update the Pinterest.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, happy Halloween, everyone. Enjoy those pumpkin spiced latte ales, probably made with some lactose in there. And stay safe out there.